from Picking and Punching. Welcome to 10 Questions, my friend.
I'm happy to be here, man. This is the greatest show ever, and I can't wait to be here. Now, you better send me my check for saying that too, all right?
Absolutely. You will get your commission check. Thank you very much.
Perfect.
Absolutely. Man, thank you so much for coming on or agreeing to sit down with me. I've watched your channel grow. I think it was Mark from Legion of Comics that actually sent a message in one of our group chats and said, hey, go check this cat out. And I'm glad he did because I found your channel and I've watched it ever since. So I'm excited to have you on here.
Perfect,
and question one is always the same. It's what or who got you into comics or just collecting in general?
So it's kind of a long story in a way. Growing up, my grandparents were pickers, or my grandmother used to volunteer at her local church thrift store, and then they used to go set up at the flea markets all the time. And then so I used to go with them. My grandfather used to collect Matchbox and Hot Wheels and stuff like that. And like he loved like toys, little trinkets and things like that. So I used to set up, I go with them. And then my dad's also like a picker too. He actually has he had a tree and hauling business growing up. So he would, we would cut down trees, and then throughout the year we would he would have some deals with some probate lawyers where when someone died, they didn't have, no next of kin or anything like that. And the lawyer would just hire someone to come in and clear out the whole estate. So we used to do jobs like that. We used to get all kind of like antiques and get stuff. And we used to take that stuff to the auction and, flea markets. And then my dad was a sports car collector, just like, anyone in the 80s and 90s growing up. I mean, that was the hottest thing out there.
Absolutely.
So my first love was actually collecting sports cards, football, basketball, baseball. And then I was always into like toys. I like toys and video games. So that was something that stuck with me throughout the years. And if you just like look behind, I don't know if you can see it, probably look behind me, you see all the video games in the background there, just a little taste of that. But, so yeah, something I loved. And then, comics, I dabbled a little bit when I was younger as a kid and stuff, but I didn't really collect them. I like the sports cards is what, was the biggest thing for me. And then, kind of as I got older, I was collecting, wrestling figures and action figures, and it just progressed, man. And then I started collecting video games. Then just like everyone else, I got older. I, started chasing girls and, put that stuff in the back burner. And then, at that time too, also the sports car market was exploding and they almost flooded the market. Growing up, you had Topps, Flair, Upper Deck, but then it was like Topps Stadium, Topps Chrome, Topps Bowman. And then it just got, where instead of buying 5 or 10 different brands, each brand had, 20 or 30 subcategories, and it just became overwhelming and it wasn't as fun for me anymore. So, but I always loved opening up box of cards. Thinking back to my childhood, my dad would go to a card show, would get those wax boxes, crack them open. It was a blast. I loved it. So it wasn't until fast forward then, I've always collected, video games. I have a huge video game collection now, about over 2,000 video games.
Oh, wow.
I have a huge action figure collection of like the old like 80s and like 90s wrestling figures, Ghostbusters, Ninja Turtles. And I'm a big horror movie fan, so I collect stuff from like horror movies and like VHS as well, which is something that I'm getting back into. And then, during the pandemic, just like everyone else, I started getting back into collecting, and I was, started dating some, my current fiance right now, and she had a kid who was 8 years old, and he was a diehard Marvel fan, and I was real big into Marvel movies, and just a way for me and him to connect, it was the Marvel stuff was actually a big thing for us. So we would sit down, watch some movies, and then I started like looking some stuff on YouTube, and then I came across Comic Tom's channel, the top 10, which I love top 10 lists. Anything with top 10 could be top 10 cats running around the neighborhood, and I watch it because I just like top 10 lists. You know what I mean? Like, doesn't matter what it is. So, yeah, I started watching that, and then I started doing some research, and I'm really big, like, I hate school, I hate college, and I hate, I completed all that, but functional education is something I just can't get enough of. So when it came to like collecting and sports cards, and I would pick up those price guides, and I would study every single thing in there. So now in the modern age, we have YouTube. So I went on there, and I probably took in maybe 40, 50 hours of like comic book content of just find out where the market's at. And then before I actually bought my first like slab, I probably put in over 100 hours of like watch content online, all kind of different YouTube channels about that, learn the market. So The comic book market is something I really got back in. I started getting into I did my research in 2019. I didn't make my first slab purchase till around 2020, to be honest with you. And then fast forward to the mystery boxes. That was, I used to watch people open up Amazon boxes and like Amazon returns and all that stuff, which I love, which is something I have a reselling business. So that's something I'm going to get into too. And I bought my first comic book mystery box from Torpedo Comics and I hit the grand prize. My first time I hit my grand prize on their it was $100 box, and it was the silk variant, 9.8. It was like a $700 or $800 book. I paid $100, so I was hooked, man. It brought me back to my childhood and opened up those black boxes again.
That's awesome. And something, we had a similar childhood, it sounds like, and anybody that's watched this channel, and I apologize for those people who watch this every week, I'm going to say it again. I grew up, I had an uncle who picked, and he sold at flea markets, and there was something about being a kid and running around that flea market that was so much fun. And I knew everybody there. Everybody knew I was Tony's nephew, like everybody knew who I was, and I can still smell it. Like I can smell the food. I can smell, the whole thing just being there. And how much fun was it? Like going out as a kid, like it's like going treasure hunting. I mean, it really is.
It is treasure hunting. That's why it's fun.
Yeah.
That's why I call myself the modern day treasure hunter now, because when you go to those yard sales and when I go to the flea markets, you never know what you're going to find, because the same vendor can show up each week, have a whole nother selection. You just never know.
No, you're right. It is. It's so much fun. And I mean, we used to go dig in barns. I mean, we would go. I mean, I could just the countless weekends and hours I spent with my uncle and my dad, because it was my dad's brother. And my dad was super cool. He just wasn't into collecting necessarily. That was more my uncle. But I loved it. And so if I wanted to do it, he would go. He would take me and we would go hang out with my uncle. So I want to kind of rotate into question 2, but I want to kind of stay on this same topic. Is like, what brought you to YouTube? Because my uncle, before he passed, like he was kind of moving into the eBay world, right? Mm-hmm. Where he was selling at flea markets, but we were learning eBay and how to list things online. And, I was kind of helping him with that. But it kind of seems like for people who resell, that YouTube is kind of that next step where it's almost like free advertising for what you do. And for somebody who's a reseller, is that what brought you to YouTube, is kind of taking that step? Or was it, pandemic, I'm bored, I want to try to do this?
So be honest. So I started selling on eBay in 1999. So like when I first started selling, it was a different world where I was taking in money orders and checks, no PayPal or anything like that. So people would mail me that in the mail. I'd check the mail every day. Like I was in high school selling stuff, I was a very early adapter when it came to that. But actually I started, if you actually look at my YouTube channel, if you look when the date was started, it actually says it was started in 2019, but I didn't post my first video to November 2021 because I actually was planning on starting a picking channel before that. So to be honest with you, I had no plans to do anything in the comic book world when I first started my YouTube channel. I wanted to help educate people and teach people how to do what I do, because I've been doing this for over 20 years. I do it on the side. I work a full-time job, but I did it on the side. And then it's gotten so big where I was actually, during the pandemic, I got laid off from my job, and I was making more money selling stuff online at the time than I was, making my 9 to 5. And so many people, who were going through tough times, during the pandemic, so many people were getting laid off, losing their job, and they didn't have the luxury of the knowledge that I had or just knowing how to do it. So originally my whole plan was just to document my journey, because first it was just to have fun with it,
Right.
And I have so much fun on my channel. And then secondly, it was more or less to help promote wrestling, not promote my eBay, believe it or not. So, because the whole purpose behind Picking and Punching is about an independent professional wrestler that travels the country punching and picking his way across America. That was the whole concept behind the channel. And so that was the thing, because when I go out to shows and stuff, I wrestle in like Florida, Georgia, Alabama. I would wrestle out in the southern states. I go to Louisiana and stuff like that. So say if the show starts at like 6 o'clock, say if it takes me 4 hours to get there. Well, a lot of guys might leave at like noon to get there, like 2 hours before the show. I'm leaving at like 6 a.m. because I want those 6 hours to pick all the way up. So I'm hitting pawn shops, I'm hitting yard sale, I'm hitting, through flea markets I find on the side of the road, like all kind of crazy things. And I was like, man, this is awesome. And I would go to these, shows where, I'm traveling up and down, I'm gone for, 12 hours or 14 hours. I'm like, it's just not worth a payday for the wrestling events. Cause, as an independent wrestler, you're pretty much considered the minor leagues of pro wrestling compared to like baseball or like basketball, summer league or something like that, D League. And, you're trying to work your way up to like, get signed by a major company. So, you're fronting a lot of your money going to these things. And I was like, I'm losing money, going to these shows. But then I was like, oh, I'll pick along the way. And then I would places that I've never picked before, I never knew or even knew about. I'm finding these honey holes, and I start going on that circuit. These companies bring me back to the show. So a month or two later, I keep going back, hitting those little honey holes along the way. So that's how really YouTube really came. Was nothing to do with my eBay store. Is really to promote wrestling and picking.
Interesting. So that's cool. So when you're going to your shows, you literally pick on the way, picking and punching. I love it, man. So no, that's cool. So let's go to question 3 and let's talk a little bit about your channel, like the kind of stuff. If somebody's new to you, is watching this, this interview, and they're new to you, just talk about the kind of content they're going to see on your channel.
Yeah, absolutely. So the way I look at it is primarily 3 phases. Okay, phase 1 is, I'm a pro wrestler on there, but I don't put really any wrestling content. I'll mix some stuff in there in the future here coming up. But the biggest thing is yard sales, thrifting, flea markets. You're going to see me go out, educate you on what I'm buying, how much I'm paying for it, and what it's worth or what I can sell. So I actually put up comps of what items are, or I put up real comps of what I've actually sold. If it's sold by the time I post that video. Also, I help educate people, but I make it entertaining as well. So it's a little of both right there. Second part is I love to open up mystery boxes because it's that you just never know what we're going to get in the box. And that's kind of how I got into, more into comic books, because I was buying comic book mystery boxes. And that was just by dumb luck, because during, I live in Florida, I can pick all year round. But when I started my channel in November, still there wasn't, November, December, that's like our downtime for like picking at yard sales. And I was like, I needed some type of content to fill, because, I know YouTube, you have to be consistent, gotta be consistent. Right. And so I just bought some mystery boxes as fillers, and it just, one thing led to another, man. And I bought some like big $900 boxes, about a $777 box. I bought some $400 boxes. Some are great, some got screwed on. And it's funny, is like the worse, the more I get screwed, the more people like it, which is, it's
right. Yeah, that's like regular news, right?
Yeah, so, but so pretty much just, it's going to help show you how to make money, but also have fun. And then I'm going to buy mystery boxes and other things. So
that's cool. Yeah, no, absolutely. I think one of the first videos I watched, I can't remember, that's when that whole Journey in the Mystery Box came out.
Yes.
And like, I think DJ, had opened his, and, I had talked to him, and then I knew you had bought one. Like, I could not wait to watch your video. Like, I was like, I cannot wait to see what he says. So no, that's cool. So you really, the comic book mystery box is just something really, it was about filling time.
Filling time, man. Because listen, I call myself a modern day treasure hunter. It's mystery boxes. It's, picking. But so the whole purpose of me buying the comic book mystery box, because I was actually looking to buying Amazon return, pallets, and looking into buying Amazon returns and like Target returns and other things. And that was just the path of least resistance for me, was buying a comic book mystery box, because small batches. I like to go to a casino every once in a while, like to gamble here and there. And, I only like to gamble with what I can afford the risk, lose and stuff like that. So it's fun. And I'm very analytical. So when it comes to numbers, when I see these mystery boxes come out, I'm like, okay, well, I got 1 in 6 chance of winning this, or I break down the numbers. I'm like, oh, this is well worth it. I'm just going to go for it. So.
Right. No, that makes sense. So let's go to question 4. And I'm really, because, there are a lot of people that are like, they'll watch your channel. And I like to watch those picking channels too, like people that are going to yard sales and things like that, because I grew up doing it. So, it's just kind of to see the difference. But can you kind of explain what the life of a picker really is? Because it looks glamorous, right? You're showing up at a yard sale, you're buying some cool stuff. You hope you find some stuff you can make some money on, but every trip can't be gold. So Can you talk about, just like, from, how do I want to ask you this? Like, from where you start, you go, you find something, to the breaking it down, to, listing it, like the different places you sell. Can you kind of lay out, kind of what a picker does?
Sure, absolutely. So the biggest thing is finding the items. So when you first start out, I always recommend people go to thrift stores or yard sales. The reason for that is thrift stores, everything's curated into one spot for you. People are just donating stuff, and you can usually get some good deals. Now a lot of those prices are going up, but yard sales are probably the best bang for your buck. But the biggest thing is you have to know where to find yard sales. So there's apps out there you can find yard sales: Craigslist, Facebook Marketplace. So Facebook Marketplace is another place I used to hunt on a lot. Mercari, when Mercari first came out, a lot of people didn't know about Mercari. I was an early adapter to Mercari, and I would literally find underpriced items on there all the time. I used to buy, back in the day, I used to go on eBay, because eBay used to be all auction based, not buy it now. That pretty much evolved to more of a retail format. And when it was actually auction based, I would go on there and just buy big lots of items and have them sent to me, and then take those lots, separate them one by one, and relist them on eBay. So I would make my profits there. So the first step is trying to find your item. So, and then a typical Saturday morning for me is I'll pull up the apps Friday night, see where the yard sales are, and they start at 7, 8 o'clock. But it starts at 7. I'm there like 6:15. I'm getting there when people are setting up. And I always be real respectful. Say, hey, I know I'm early. Do you mind if I look 9 or 10 times? To say, yeah, go ahead, because they just want to sell the stuff. So I try to get there first before everyone else does. And then I try to put a good map together I look for community yard sales, because it's the most concentrated, group of, houses at one time, but you're also going to have the most competition. So you need to get there early, and you also need to be quick too. So for example, like if I'm going out just hitting a 1 yard sale here and there, that's fine. I can take my time, but a community yard sale, I got to be like in and out as soon as possible, because I need to get to the next one and get down and go down. So there's a lot of planning. It's very strategic. You have to be very strategic when it comes to the yard sales, and then knowing what to buy. That's another thing. So I always recommend, when people start with what you know, okay, and then start. There's a famous saying that says, "Is it better to go an inch deep and a mile long, or is it better to go an inch wide and a mile deep?" It's better to go an inch wide and a mile deep. You want to become an expert in that category, because you don't want to just buy the low hanging fruit. That's where you find some big scores, like that. So part of my business is I go picking, but that's also very time consuming. So people don't understand that if I go out if I leave the house at 6:30 on a Saturday morning, I may hit up 10, 15, 30 yard sales, just to, make a few $100s. Or there's times I go out and, like if you, my video I just posted last week, literally was a community yard sale. This 1 yard sale was so good that I did a whole video just on the 1 yard sale, on the community yard sale, because I think it was like $1,700 or $1,800 for 100. I paid $160, $170 for everything at the yard sale. And it was like Star Wars figures, like 10 pairs of Nike shoes, a Jordan, all kind of crazy stuff. So, you have those big hits, but I tell people the biggest thing is you have to be consistent, and you have to go out and just hit as many places as possible. It's like when people ask out, you ask a girl out on a date, she's going to say no, then you're stuck. But if you ask 100 girls out on a date, you're going to get a lot of dates out of that.
That's right.
Yeah, the biggest thing. So going out, so let's say on Saturday I go out, maybe I spend 4 or 5 hours, I get those items I bring home. Then because I film for YouTube, I got to take everything out and line it up and film it and talk about what I do. And then I just throw it in my garage. And then I literally have to sometimes clean those items, which is a pain in the butt. I have a photo station set up, so I set everything up, take photos of it, and I try to, once again, be very strategic with it. I try to knock out all my photos at one time. So then when I do list, I list off my cell phone. When I have my cell phone in my pocket, I just list throughout the day. So I'm eating breakfast, drinking coffee, I'll list 2 or 3 items. On my lunch break, I'll list 4 or 5 items. It's the girl wants to go to the store, and I'm like, I don't want to go in the store, and we're shopping, so I'll sit in the car and list a couple items. So it's just consistently just listing. So I list primarily on eBay. I used to sell a lot on Mercari too, but kind of cut back on that because just the marketplace and eBay is so much bigger.
It is, yeah.
Eventually going to probably get into Whatnot. I'm trying to wait to see what eBay does with eBay Live. That's what they're going to do to try to combat Whatnot. So, but yeah, that's the biggest thing there, getting those items. And then I have to inventory them. So I take those items and I have, when you're just starting out, it's fine, but you need to be organized. So I literally have shelving units. Say if I have 100 totes, it'd be tote 1A, 1B, 1C. So when I list the item on eBay, I put it in the description where it is, so I know where to find the item too. And then once I get those orders, I'm packing them up in the morning and taking them to the post office. So it's a lot of work. People don't realize, you see the fun part on YouTube, but I mean, there's hours and hours on the backside of things. I'm eventually going to do it full time. That's going to be my full time thing. I was waiting to close in this house. As you know, being the industry you're in, I couldn't mess up my income here. So, and especially with a business, you're going to try to have as many write-offs as possible. So I could not do anything to mess up my income at that time. But now I want to eventually break off the deal full time.
So when you started buying, you said, did not too many things. Like your advice is don't do too many things. Do what you know and become an expert on that. What was the thing that really you kind of got started with?
So when I was a kid growing up, I was always looking for sports cars and action figures and then video game stuff because that's stuff I collected anyway. So I had a good understanding of the market. And then later on, fast forward, years later, I started getting the bobbleheads at one point in time. And I literally so where I live, in Tampa, Florida, and we're one of the meccas for spring training for minor league baseball. So there's literally like 10 minor league stadiums within an hour or two of my house. So you have like the Phillies, the Yankees, the Tigers, the Pirates, there's the Rays, you have so many other ones. So I went to a Phillies minor league game and I walked in, they gave me a bunch of Mike Schmidt bobbleheads and my friends that went, I took them and I popped them on eBay and I was getting $40 a pop for them. And I was like, wow, this is going to be real profitable. So that's kind of how I always have I'm very business oriented. So I was like, oh, this is great. So I started going to all the minor league games because I didn't realize that people that are buying them were all the fans from like Philadelphia and New York up top there that didn't get them. And down here, they're only limited to 500 or 1,000 per game. So, and then I started buying them up and I went to flea markets and started buying up all the bobbleheads. And then next thing you know, like I cleaned out the whole area of bobbleheads. And then I was like, well, what's my next step? So I incorporated and I started getting bobbleheads produced. I literally got like, when the Miami Heat won the, they won the national championship. When they won the championship, the Miami Heat.
Yeah. With Bron and those guys. Yeah.
Bron, Dwayne Wade, Chris Bosh. So my business model was I couldn't compete with like say Dick's Sporting Goods or Walmart because if I bought bobbleheads, they're buying at such because I had a contract with Forever Collectibles, and when they would buy from them, they're buying in bulk. I'm buying a couple cases of each player at the time. I can't compete with their bulk buy rate. So I actually contacted them. I said, hey, since you guys already had the licensing, because I looked into licensing and licensing was going to be like $100,000. I was like, well, I don't have $100,000 around to get the licensing. So I was like, hey, since you guys already have the licensing, can I make some custom bobbleheads that would be exclusive for my company? Just give me a minimum order. They said, yeah, no problem. We can do that. So I actually designed stuff like the Miami Heat. I designed bobbleheads for like the Philadelphia Phillies, the Giants. But the coolest one though was a Miami Heat was a Chris Bosh, Dwayne Wade, and LeBron James, and they're all standing there with holding the trophies and stuff like that. And I don't know how this happened, but Mike and Mike, remember the ESPN show? So somehow they bought my. There's only 144 of those that ever produced, and they went on eBay or I sold out of them. They got one, and they actually used to have it sitting on their desk for the TV show.
No kidding.
Yeah. So it was a bobblehead I produced and stuff like that. But at the time when I was doing it, man, I was going to 5, 10, 15 yards. So I was looking for bobbleheads and like toys, but I was coming away empty handed. And that's when I was like, a light bulb went off. I'm like, man, I'm wasting so much time. Time is money. Even if I did find stuff, I'm finding $50 worth of stuff, spending 3-4 hours. That's definitely not worth it. So I went on YouTube. I started watching a bunch of channels of what people were buying, and I started learning about vintage clothing and used shoes, which I never thought would be like such a huge market. And then after watching a bunch of videos, I went out and first yard sale I went up to, I found like Timberlands, Jordans, and they were like a buck a pair of shoes. So I bought those and I was flipping those for like $50-$75 a pair, and I made a couple $100. I started buying shoes, and I started getting new vintage t-shirts, single stitch t-shirts. And then I was also other things like just buying stuff I like. Like I love movies and DVDs. So I knew when stuff was out of print, what was rare. So I would start buying DVDs and CDs that were out of print, and it's just snowball effect. So once I got some knowledge on one category, it was an easy transition to like shoes. Okay, what else is good in clothing? Oh, let's look at vintage T-shirts. Oh, that's cool. Well, what's next in line for T-shirts? Let's look at jackets, and then it just progressed, down the line.
Awesome. No, that's cool. And as far as, for people who, I think people have to understand, I know how it was for my uncle, is it was a constant hustle.
Correct.
You always hustling. If you want to make money at it, you're
Yep.
always hustling, and you're always trying to gain knowledge. You're always studying, like you said earlier, trying to become an expert in the things that you're selling. And he did that a lot. And he would talk about, he would say a lot of times it's feast or famine. You might have one weekend where you find a bunch of stuff and you make a lot of money. And then you may have several weekends in a row where you find a few things and you make a little bit of money.
Correct.
But it's when you push that all together, it ends up becoming profitable.
Correct. And there's the term that a lot of people use in the picking industry is called your death pile, which is when you go out, say if I buy 50 items and I only list 10 of them that week, well, then I got 40 items sitting on a pile that need to be listed. And so when you have those downtimes, stuff that you're picking out, if you can't go picking or something like that, family gets in the way, you have those items on it. But what I eventually started, transition my business is buying bulk and wholesale, because that's where you can make some real money. So, yes, can you be very successful picking at yard sales and flea markets? Yes, but can you make enough money to do it full time? Depending on what you need to live on, depending on where you live. But I mean, I would say, could you easily make $40,000, $50,000 a year profits picking at yard sales? Absolutely. So now let me take that back. In living in Florida, you probably can, because you can do it all year round. Where some people like up in, say, I'm originally from Pennsylvania, where you only have 6 months out of the year to do that. It's a little bit different. So you got to be creative, find yard sales, indoor flea markets, card shows, stuff like that. But the biggest thing is when you do your picking and you have to let me know if your uncle did this as well, but he might pick and search for a lot of different things. But the biggest thing is niching down on certain markets. So either comic books, like sports cards, I'm just using these examples, or video games. So people that just sell video games, I mean, look, there's video game stores out there that make a living just of selling video games only. So that a light bulb should go off. Okay, that's a niche market I can learn enough about, because if these guys can do it full time, that's something that could be profitable. Comic books, you have comic book shops out there. People do that full time. So that's a niche market. So when you incorporate these little niche markets that you can really become an expert in, that's when you start getting like the big bucks. You can start really making some good money, because now you're buying out comic book collections, where you're spending $2,000 for a $10,000 comic book collection, or you're getting, because you just know what's in there. You can get stuff to be graded. That was a big evolution of my business as well, was not only buying those collections, niching down further and learning how to get items graded. So like I do graded video games, I do graded comic books, I do graded VHS, I do graded sports cards. So knowing that stuff, that's just going to, that puts a 2, 3, 4 times multiplier on what the value of those items are.
Right.
And so that's just evolution of it as it goes through.
No, and my uncle very much did the same thing. Like, especially when we were going to the flea market all the time, he was selling ball cards, and he was selling ball cards. He was selling comic books. He had a few knives,
Nice,
a few firearms, because things were very different back then, with firearms. So he was selling a few things like that. So he had a little bit of everything, but and coins, he did coins too.
Yep.
So he really understood that stuff, and he understood what it was worth. And as ball cards and all that kind of went away, then he kind of transitioned into tools and knives and guns and some rare coins. And if he had some rare ball cards, he would, occasionally do that. He even got into doing watches, where he was buying like Rolexes. I mean, just, crazy stuff, and going around and selling out. Well, I mean, I tell the story all the time. We were at a card show in Louisville, Kentucky, and he bought 3 Hank Aaron rookie cards. And he took 2 of them and he said, "Hey, watch the booth. I'm going to go over here." He left. He came back with a Rolex, and he ended up selling the Rolex for like $6,000. So he ended up with $6,000 and a Hank Aaron rookie card that he wanted. And I think he had about $1,000 into the whole thing.
Yep.
And it's just, but my dad always said that about him, that he was the guy that could take 10 cents and make $1 out of it. He had a niche. He just had a knack for it. And so, yeah, but no, it's a lot of fun. So it sounds, kind of similar. And like I said, I feel like some people, like you watch the franchise kicks of the world, those guys that are opening those big Amazon pallets. I've got a friend here that actually buys the pallets, and they buy the truckloads and then bring them in, and then people come in and and buy them, I guess, and break them down and sell them.
Absolutely. Yep.
Yep. So similar. Is that what you kind of do too, or you're looking to get into? Is
Well,
similar to that?
I haven't got that far into those, but yes, that's exactly what I'm doing. So one of my specialties is networking. I'm a networking machine. I used to work in the bar and nightclub industry. I used to be on tour of the professional MMA company for a couple of years. I was a director of marketing for them. And I just know a lot of people, and I'm just friendly with people, but I make contacts all the time. So my biggest thing for me, I would tell you, I buy out collections all the time now. So like literally like all the graded comic books that you see coming in like right now, like 90% of them came from one collection. Like I bought out a massive, I wanted to buy a guy's Lego collection, and I got Legos, video games, and he actually threw in, he's like, oh, I have some I didn't even look in the comic book boxes. I had no idea what was in there. And I walked in his garage, he had 13 long boxes. You know what I mean? That was a big thing for me I'm still going through those right now and still sending stuff off to be graded, because that takes a lot of time. That's the only thing that sucks about comic books and sports cards. They take a lot of time. So you got to that's why having that knowledge and go through real fast is key. But
no, absolutely.
Yeah.
No, that's awesome, man.
So
I love it. All right. So question 5, and I love asking this question for people like you who are always out on the hunt.
Sure.
Is give me a story of your most epic find, like something that you found and you're like, holy crap, I have found gold. And maybe even your most epic fail, something that you saw and then didn't really know what it was and didn't pick it up, and then found out later, I just left $1,000 laying on the table.
Sure. So, all right. So my best find ever was in the middle of the pandemic, just if you look at history, okay, a lot of people that become a lot of successful businessmen, a lot of great business have been started in downtimes because there's a lot of opportunity. And
sure.
So when people are losing their jobs, and I hate to say this, when people are losing their jobs, that's a great opportunity for me because they want to sell stuff off. They need to. So I'm always willing to buy. So you remember when all like the riots were going on, like race riots were going on at the time. There was like all kind of crazy stuff was going on. Everyone thought the world was going to burn down to the ground pretty much. Pandemic, it was just a mess. And I was at home one night, and on Facebook, someone posted up a huge game collection. And I reached out to them and said, hey, I'm interested in this. Like, hey, someone's coming to buy it. I said, okay, no problem. So it was like probably like 6, 7 o'clock at night. I literally watched the TV, passed out on the couch, woke up like an hour later, and had a message from the guy. He was like, hey, man, he's like, the guy backed out. It's $1,000 for my collection, but you have to come tonight, and it's cash only. And that's the same night where like in Tampa, a big riot broke out. They like tore down, like they looted Walmart, and like people were told to stay in your house, don't go out and stuff like that. And I was like, I just can't miss this deal. And the guy said that he's moving. I had to come tonight and tonight only, and had to bring $1,000 cash, which is not something I normally do, just for the fact that first off, I'm not going to let you know I'm bringing cash to come meet me, so we're going to meet in a public place. We're going to meet at a bank, someplace safe, so that, or I'm going to, do wire transfer, do something to, be safe about it. But so I got my money. The place was an hour away from me. I drove an hour away, got this guy's place, and it was down this like dark alley. And I'm like, you just had that, like, I know deep down inside that I had to go. You just know.
Right.
You just know. But I also had that feeling in my side. I was like, okay, well, should I pack my gun? Like, what do I need to do? So, so I get there, and the guy was super cool. So, but he tells me, he's like, hey man, I'm a procrastinator pretty much. And he's like, I had this massive video game collection. And when I looked online, like it was probably a couple $1,000s worth of stuff, what I could visually see, but the pictures weren't that good. And he was like, I'm moving tomorrow. I have to be out tonight, and I was going to put stuff in storage, but I'm moving to across the country, and I'm not taking anything with me. And I used to sell on eBay back in the day, and he was a picker too, which was cool because like there's like Super Nintendos with like $9.99, like Goodwill tags on them. So it's stuff that he acquired, but he said he got burned, which a lot of people get burned on eBay sometimes when they're first starting out, and they get burned for $50 or $60, and then they never want to sell again on there. They
right.
like. when I sell thousands of items a year on eBay, and if I get burned, I get burned. You know, I mean, it's part of the business. You know, I incorporate that in my thing. But anyway, make a long story short, I got all this stuff. I literally had an SUV with me. I filled up my girl's SUV at the time, and then he's like, oh man, he goes, I have a shed over here too that's all included, which was never in the pictures. I opened it up. It was like NESs. I don't know if you can see in the background, but I got an NES in the box over there. Just in the background, it was like Atari's in the box, GameCubes, like all these like crazy old systems. So I was getting that, and then I ended up paying him literally I couldn't take it all. It filled up his entire van. We drove to my house. I paid him cash, gave him a bonus for driving up there. And then he told me, and this is the biggest thing I can tell anyone who wants to go out yard sale and just starting out, ask is the biggest thing I tell you. So anytime you go anywhere, ask them if they have, what are you looking for? Do you have any comic books? Do you have any yard? It could be a 70-year-old lady. Hey, do you have any video games there? Actually, my grandkids used to left, but yeah, I have all these games inside and they'll bring them out for you. My best finds at places is always asking. So I asked the guy, do you have anything else? He goes, yeah. He goes, I have some sealed video games, but I, you know, you're not going to get like a great deal on these. You know, we'll have to work out a better deal. So that's fine. You know, so didn't think anything of it. Randomly hits me up a couple weeks later. I get a text message from a random number, just a picture of like a bed set with 50 sealed video games on there. And we ended up working out a deal. Like at that time, there's a website called Price Charting, which you can go on there. You type in the game. It tells you like the going rate on like eBay and stuff like that. So made a deal 50% of what the going market was. But I ended up getting Castlevania for the NES Nintendo sealed in the box. And I sat on this thing, and as soon as I knew I hit gold because I posted that picture on Instagram like I don't know, maybe a week later. And as soon as I posted it, I got random people I've never met before send me a message. Hey, I'll offer you $800. I'll give you $1,000 for it. I'll give you $1,500. I think I paid like $390 for this game. So fast forward over the pandemic, the video game market exploded, and I just had this thing sitting in my home. So I actually sent it off to be professionally graded. There's only 26 right now on the census that are graded. Mine came back an 8.0, and then they grade the seal separately, which is I think it was like an A seal. So mine's maybe like 10 or 12 that are higher graded than mine. But I actually contacted all the auction houses like Golden Auction, Heritage Auction House, and they valued it anywhere from $15,000 to $30,000.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's now I got to figure out what I'm going to do with it. I don't want it laying around. I'm going to send it off, you know, just but yeah, anywhere from, so I mean, listen, if I get $10,000 for it, I'm super happy. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, that's a win, baby.
$5,000 for it, whatever, you know what I mean? But yeah, I mean, conservatively, they said, you know, Golden Auction said they had one go recently sold probably 6 months ago for about 30,000. And then Heritage told me, which I figured Heritage is more experienced, and they say around 15 to 20. So I don't know. I mean, I'm thinking it's maybe 20,000, 25, who knows? But $390 into 15, 20,000. So
that's crazy. So do you have any like fail stories, like where you left something laying on the table and you're like, oh man?
So if you guys go onto my YouTube channel, you can actually posted the video up last week. I think it's like the greatest. Oh, this is a yard sale that dreams are made of. That's what I call the video. And in the video, so here's the thing. Sometimes you go to a yard sale and there's so much good stuff, you get overwhelmed. And because you're trying to grab, because you know people are going to come and you're grab what you know. So there's like a whole collection of Star Wars figures. I was grabbing those. There was, you know, other toys, all the Nike shoes there. Well, I picked up this Coleman lantern. It came in a red, but it's like the old lanterns, like the 60s and 70s. And I knew Coleman's good. It's a good name brand to know. But this one had a red case, a red square rectangle case around it, which normally you don't see with those. So I picked it up, I took it out, looked at it. I looked at the lady and like, hey, how much you want for this? And I bought all of her cast iron pans right before that because cast iron can bring good money. And it's like $5, which is a no-brainer. You know what I mean? Like if I lose $5, I lose $5. Like, so I don't know what it was thinking in my head. I put it down. I went to go grab other stuff, and I grabbed all the stuff, took it to my car, came back, and I kept saying to myself, oh, I need to go grab that lantern, And some guy walked up, picked up the lantern, grabbed it, bought it. And if you watch the video, I'm very transparent in everything I do. I showed the good and the bad. That $5 lantern recently sold on eBay for $318.
Oh, man. Yeah.
Like, I was so so angry, I guess you could say, when I was, because like you remember when I watch these videos, when I'm editing, I see everything I miss. I'm like, how the heck did I miss that? It was right in front of me. You know what I mean? The thing could have been like attacking my leg, and I just would have just walked right by it. With this one, and yeah, so then I ended up finding out like in mint condition they can go for like $400 or $500. So I literally just whatever. I mean, I still. But this was all. I mean, that's how great this yard sale was. I got $1,700 worth of stuff for the yard sale, and I missed out on a $400 lantern. So
It happens, right?
yeah,
That's great stories, man. I love that. All right, so this question is, I kind of thought about this question for you. It's just something that I've been seeing in the comments. I had Journo's Comics on with me the other day.
Okay.
And, we did 10 questions, and he asked me if he could clip a video or, do a clip from the interview we did and post it on his channel. And I was like, of course, that's as good for me as it is,
Cool.
as it is him. And I went over and I looked just to see what some of the comments were, see how it was received. And one of the major comments that I saw, and I'm starting to hear it more and more, so I'm kind of interested from your perspective as a reseller.
Sure.
What they were talking about was the comic book speculator versus the comic book collector.
Sure.
And a lot of them were like, because what we were talking about is the comic market crashing or is it a correction? And, and I think he and I both agreed it's a correction. You're going to see certain parts of the market correct. But I was surprised at how angry some of the people were about the speculation market. Because to me, in a sense, I get it. If you're a collector, you don't have a ton of money and things get more expensive. You can't buy it. Like, you have a true love for it. You just can't afford to buy it. And that's frustrating. And I get that. But speculators help drive interest in the other things that you have in your collection that maybe you don't care if you hang on to anymore. You can get more money out of it and go buy something that you want. So I was interested your take on that from like the collector versus the speculator. Like, where do you kind of land on that?
So it's funny you bring that up, because I actually just had a whole conversation about this the other day, because it's not just the comic book market. So I'm heavily invested in the video game market as well, where you have half the people that are like, video games are meant to be played, and then you have the other half of the market is like, no, I want to preserve these as sealed games, and they hate each other as well. Like, they go back and forth. And then like the sports card market, you have people, oh, I hate getting people doing graded games, or I'm sorry, graded cards, and where they're speculating, you're just driving up, and then you're just dumping them right away when the player gets hurt and stuff like that. So it's funny is you have that in all the markets. And here's the thing, man, is I'm a collector first and foremost. So I have a personal collection. I have a PC for video games. I have a PC for comic books. I have a PC for a lot of things. People buy comic books. There's, different strokes for different folks. So people may buy it and they don't read the comic books. They buy it because of the art. Some people buy them because they love. I know you love to read your books, so you love to read. Some people, you get more invested in a book because you like the storyline of it. So then you want to invest in maybe buying that book. Where other people, they're coming out with a movie. Hey, I just want to buy it to make a quick flip. But it's what those people are flipping that money. Are they paying for their family, or are they using that money to invest back in their collection? And that's the biggest thing a lot of people don't understand, is that I speculate, but I also personally collect. So when I buy stuff to speculate, when I flip that, I use that money to reinvest back in my collection and then put some money in my pocket as well. That's a way for the hobby to pay for your collection, because this collecting is extremely expensive. And when you want to get the stuff, your holy grails, they're rare pieces. Normal people don't have $1,000, $10,000, $20,000 to just drop in a comic book,
Right.
But you can trade up, or you can work your way up to do that. So I think there's room for all of us in the game, and you can be like, I call myself a hybrid collector, because I'm a speculator, but I'm also a collector as well, and I do both sides of it. So I see both sides. I stand in the middle of the fence. I see both sides of the argument. Both people are right. Both people are wrong. Both people they're not going to change their mind. That's the biggest thing. So, but I see in the comments all the time too. People get mad about it. What are you going to do? Just do you. That's all you got to worry about, man. And the rest is going to fall into place.
No, and I agree with you. Like, I get both sides, right? Like, I get it. And I grew up being taught that the hobby can pay for itself. Correct. That you can find a deal on something and then go and sell it at a higher rate, at the current market price. You may make $100. You can stick that back. That goes towards a grail for yourself. So I get the resale part of it. I kind of enjoy that part of it myself, just piddling around, just having fun. I don't do it at the level you do, but, I sell some stuff and just, but I primarily do it because I'm looking to get that next thing. I don't want to use mine and Amy's money, what we work for daily for my toys and for, the things that I'm buying. So that's why I kind of do it. But I also get from the pure collector standpoint where you literally aren't selling anything. You buy it, you keep it. You are a hardcore collector that, because the market is the way it is, it makes it more difficult for you to do what you love. Or at least you feel like you're having to pay too much for it. So I get it. But I agree with you. I think there's room for everybody.
And I think the reason why so many people are upset with it is how fast the market moves. Because if you think about your uncle, what your uncle did back in the day, he was flipping sports cards, okay? But he was buying hot prospects, hot players. The market just didn't move as fast as it did because there wasn't the internet at that time. You're picking up your Beckett Sporting book, your stuff, and you're reading those books. You're picking up your Overstreet Price Guide. You're looking at these comic books and say, oh, wow, this one's starting to, I'm starting to see all these hard books from the golden age starting to move. Now you're going to start to go pick those up when you see them because you're speculating because you're based on watching what that price guide is doing. So people don't understand this is just the evolution of speculation over the last 20, 30 years. And a lot of people don't look at it that way. And the reason why people get so angry right now is because, like, if you have Key Collector, you're signed up, like I have Key Collector, right? So I'm sitting there at work and I get a ding on my phone, instant notification. Hey, Dateline just dropped this. Marvel just signed a deal for this. People get the instant to their phone. What the first thing they're going to do is they're going to jump online and start doing that. Where before we didn't have that, we didn't have the instant gratification where we can do that. So, and then there's Instagram, there's, Discords, there's Facebook groups. I mean, there's Twitter. There's so many outlets out there that you get your news from. So everything moves at a speed of 10 times the one compared to what it once did. And that's where I think the people get upset because the market moves so much faster and they get outpriced right away because maybe they don't have those keys. They're not using those tools available to them. But
that's a great point. And something I hadn't really thought about because you're right. My uncle could buy, a set of rookie cards and the value would hold for 6 months to a year. If there was somebody that it was a hot rookie, like we'll go with Zion, right? That was one of the hardest cards to get your hands on when his cards started dropping, based on the speculation that he was going to be great.
Correct.
And then, he's been injured and those other things. But
so bad.
But then you would have to, now it's instant. The market changes like that. Back then, you might be able to get your value of that card for 6 months. So, that's a great point.
Then another point, too, is we didn't have social media influencers, because here's the thing, like, and I'll give you an example, like the VHS market is in the infancy stage right now where it's very, very new, but then it just takes someone for like, say, I'll use like Drake or Gary V to post up an Instagram post or a Twitter post of what he's buying. Now people are going to jump on there because it's influencing that market too. So we have, DJs out there, Aoki's out there right now buying sports cards left and right, posted up, and it all depends on the market. But it's just, I think people are just upset with how fast it moves.
No, I think that's great. It's a great answer to it. I appreciate you answering that question. All right, so question 7 is kind of a new segment. We've done it on several team questions now, but it's explain this Instagram post. And what I chose, you kind of mentioned already. So we're going to kind of, turn this interview from more of the collecting aspect and the picking aspect to this.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah. So you are a wrestler. Now, is it considered professional wrestling because you get paid, right?
Correct. Yes.
All right. Good deal. So kind of talk about this post first off. What are we looking at here?
So this is actually in a training school out in St. Pete. I did a late night session there. So, I've been a professional wrestler for 5+ years right now. And, once the pandemic hit, contact sports, just like anything else, we got put in the back burner there. So, I didn't wrestle for about a year. And I was actually just getting back into, I was getting a bunch of upcoming shows coming up. So I was actually going out there and start training. And it felt good that night, man, to get in the ring and just start training, take some bumps, which they, when you hit the mat, they call it taking a bump, and beat some people up and just have fun, man. It's when I'm in that ring, it's like living your childhood dream, so which is fun. So I love it.
Listen, when I was a kid, and people have heard me say this 100 times too, we literally had like 3 channels. So TBS was one of them. And so I was an Atlanta Braves fan, and they sucked. That was the days. I'm the Dale Murphy generation, and they were awful. And Bob Horner and Rafael Ramirez and the Negro Brothers and all that. Anyway, and you had, I guess it was the time, it was called NWA Wrestling. And I was freaking addicted to that because you had the Road Warriors would show up, the Midnight Express, the Four Horsemen, the Nature Boy Ric Flair, Jimmy Cornette, Arn Anderson. I got to meet Arn Anderson at C2E2.
Yep.
And you talking about a child. I was so nervous. Like I thought I met him and I was so excited. So I ever since I knew you did this, I've always wanted to ask somebody this.
Sure.
So like growing up, did you say, because I thought about it, right? I was like, oh my God, I'd love to be a wrestler. That seems like so much fun. I mean, I thought those were the baddest dudes on the planet. I thought Hawk and Animal were the baddest dudes on the planet. There's action figures sitting right over there. Like growing up, were you like, I want to be a wrestler? Like, how does that even happen? Like, how does that even come about?
Well, it's just think of all growing up, just think of your friends. They want to be pro baseball, pro basketball players, pro football. They want to be in a rock band. You want to be a pro. It's just what you want to do as a kid. You literally watch TV. You find something on TV that you just obsess with, and then that's what you want to do. And I fell in love with pro wrestling, just like anyone else. So I had WWF. I lived up north. That was WWF country. So you were NWA, WCW, Ted Turner.
Mm-hmm.
Where up there, I was Vince McMahon. Grew up WWF. I grew up about 10 minutes outside Allentown, Pennsylvania, about an hour outside Philadelphia. And the big circuit for the WWF back in the day was like New York, Boston, Philadelphia, Allen, and they used to always do the TV tapings in Allentown, Pennsylvania. So locally in my area up there was just huge for pro wrestling. And my cousins were like big fans. And but I grew up watching WWF Saturday night, Saturday morning, and watching Hulk Hogan and stuff like that. And then one day I went to my cousins, and I'm the oldest. I have some younger siblings, but my 2 cousins are older than me, a couple years older. And I remember going to their house, and they popped in the VHS tape of Starrcade, I think 86, which was the scaffold match with the Road Warriors and Midnight Express, and Jim Cornette falls off the top of the scaffold.
I remember it
and
well.
He ends up breaking both his ankles, and I remember watching that, and I was mind blown. I was like, it's like, what is this wrestling? Like, I mean, it was darker. It was a little more dingy compared to like the WWF. Like the production value of WWF was just so much better at the time. But this was just something totally different. And I just loved it. And the biggest thing for me is, I had a good childhood growing up, my parents, we didn't make a lot of money, but they tried to do their best to try to, make sure that we had what we had a roof over our head, had food on the table. But when I turned on that wrestling and, we had a little cheater box at the time, we got all the pay-per-views back in the day. And then like, I ended up, I'd watch those pay-per-views, and for those 2-3 hours, my house could be on fire. My dog could get hit by a car. The roof could be blown up by a tornado. It wouldn't matter because I was just memorized, watching what was going on. It was the, I guess you say it was the suspense of disbelief. I just didn't know, like watching a magic show, you're like, oh my God, like, how did he do that? Like watching wrestling, like how are they so walking? It's just, and then it was a storyline back in the day because in the 80s and 90s, you had 4 pay-per-views. You had, WWF had Royal Rumble, SummerSlam, Survivor Series, and WrestleMania, and they were spread out every 3 to 4 months. So they had 3 to 4 months to build up that storyline. And it's a big reason why I like comic books, because they build up that story over an arc of, say, 6 comic books or 12 comic books. And so that was just a natural progression for me. But I love the story in pro wrestling. Now, fast forward to now, modern day, like WWE and stuff like that, where now it's just more or less of putting out as much content as possible, where it takes away, they don't have enough time to build up that story consistently over 2-3 months, where they're doing a pay-per-view, and then you have 3 weeks to build up a story to the next pay-per-view. Where now I really enjoy AEW a lot, which is on TBS now, and TNT, which they replaced like the NWA and WCW thing. But they only did four or five pay-per-views, so they're building those storylines up over 2 months before they do. So I just, that's the aspect I love about wrestling.
So how did you even get into it? Like, you just decided one day, I want to be a wrestler, and did you show up somewhere? Like, how does that even work?
So I've been an athlete all my life.
Mm-hmm.
I originally was actually in high school, so I was a captain of my football team, and I was literally working my dad's business. I was putting money away. I was planning on going to pro wrestling school. So you actually have to go to pro wrestling school, just like a trade school or something like that. And I started saving up all this money. And, because a lot of the places you had to be 18. So I was like, okay, I'm 18 my senior year. I plan on going and I graduate and go to pro wrestling school. And I blew my transmission on my car. So that money I had to save for wrestling school went for there. I ended up going off to a small college in Pennsylvania to play college football there. And then, at that point in time, that was early 2000s. That's where UFC evolved from like the early 1990s, where it became human cockfighting, they called it at the time, and got banned all over the place, where they started putting in weight classes, and then that would start going on. So UFC started building up popularity at the time, and then I started taking up like full contact kickboxing for a while, and I was starting to go more like the mixed martial arts route. And that time I kind of got away from wrestling because it was like, UFC's, that's real fighting, where pro wrestling's all, stage fighting. And then once again, I started looking at schools, but then I moved down to Florida, and I didn't transfer schools down to the University of South Florida. I was going to try to walk onto the football program down there. And then I ended up life got in the way of things. And, I got into mixed martial arts, and I started training jiu-jitsu, and then went on tour with like a professional MMA company. And I was like, wow, this is my dream. I always thought that I would be on tour with a pro wrestling company. And I was like, but it was always in the back of my head, And then, we had a TV deal with HDNet at the time, which is Mark Cuban's company, and which is now sold off as Access TV. But we would do live shows on there. And then, Bobby Lashley, who's signed into WWF or WWE right now, he was starting to fight mixed martial arts. So he actually came to one of our shows, and like got to hang out with him, got to train with him a little bit. And I just kind of got my scratch that itch again for me. I was like, oh man, I just but it was always in the back of my head. And so fast forward again, I was going to start competing in fighting. And then my buddy one night sent me a message, hey, Jay Lethal, who's one of the top like wrestlers in the world, has a wrestling school in Clearwater, Florida, which at the time was like 30 or 40 minutes away from me. So he sent me the information. He's like, hey man, you always talk about doing it. Just go do it. So I was like, I don't know. So I literally got it was like a Friday or Saturday night. I was just watching TV. I started drinking a beer, and I was like, I don't know. I'm going to send him a message. And then like 2, 3, 4, 6-pack later, I was like, all right, liquid courage. Get up my phone. I mean, who knows what I wrote, to be honest with you. It could have been all over the place. And then, so I sent him a message, and next day, one of his associates called me and was like, hey, so I talked to him on the phone for like 30 minutes. They invited me out to come out. And then once I saw the school, and I was like, this is it. This is for me, man. This is perfect timing. It's either now or never. And I'm also, too, I was getting older. I didn't start wrestling when I was 18, 19. I started in my 30s, which it's, not a lot of people can jump in your 30s and jump into pro wrestling or jump into playing a contact sport, football or something like that. You just had to do it over the years. So I was like, you know what? It's now or never. DDP did this when he was 35. I'm not 35, but I'm younger. But hey, you know what? Let's go for it. And then that's how it pretty much went down. So
that's awesome. So talk a little bit about how your character developed, like your wrestling persona. And just kind of explain what your persona is and how you kind of developed that.
So my wrestling name is the Scoundrel. Yeah, see the shirt here? Rod Grimes. So growing up, I liked Hulk Hogan just like everyone else, but I liked the bad guy. It was just something about the villain, something that, watching him get in the ring, grab that microphone, and taking a crowd that was just cheering for the winner of the last match, and almost like a puppet master, and just watching his words, and he can manipulate that crowd to boo and throws things in the ring. And then when that babyface, that good guy, Hulk Hogan comes out, they crowded roughs because they want him to rip off that bad guy's head so much. So that's what I love. I love Ravishing Rick Rude. I love Roddy Piper. I love the bad guys back in the day. And so when I was creating my character, you know, in marketing, I have a marketing degree. So, you know, marketing is like something, you know, I specialize in. And I was like, man, if I create a character, I get to create someone that if 5-year-old Rod Grimes was, you know, at a wrestling show, who would he remember? And I looked back, I was like, the Demolition with like the all leather with their spikes. You had the Road Warriors, you know, with the big shoulder pads with the spikes. People had the face paint on. I didn't want to do face paint. So I was like, you know what? I was like, I want something like just something dirty, something, I don't know, something grimy. I was like, oh, Grimes, that's, yeah. So I was like, okay, I like the something grimy. And I wanted to use the name Rod because, you know, that's my real first name. And it's also my dad's first name too. So that was something I wanted to keep Rod. And then when I was thinking, I was like, Rod Grimes, something grimy. I was like, oh, Grimes, Rod Grimes. Okay. I like the sound of that. And then I was like, I want to be like a villain. And then some other guy at the time was using the name villain as his like moniker. And I was like, okay, well, I can't use villain. What else is out there? And somehow I was going through like looking for like things that are similar to villain. And I came across Scoundrel. I was like, man, that's like, sounds like 1800s, something you would say. And I was like, you know what? The Scoundrel Rod Grimes. I'm like, that just sounds dirty and sounds mean and like something out of like a comic book movie, you know what I mean? So that's how I came up with the name. And then when I came up with my outfit, and I'll send you over a photo so you can see it, but my outfit, like I literally have a black leather jacket. I come out the ring with just like spikes all over the jacket. And then I actually, the guy's actually some guy out called Rockwell Mass out in Missouri out there, right? So when I got a hold of the guy at the time, he actually makes custom masks from scratch. So I didn't want to go online and buy some Halloween mask and wear it. So I'm a big horror movie fan. So I wanted something like a Hannibal Lecter type of mask, but I wanted my own touch. Like, and you know, I like barbed wire. So I was like, yeah, you know, if I get like a Hannibal Lecter type of mask wrapped in like barbed wire and like you can just see like these evil eyes come out, and then I was like, you know what? I'm going to put my hair in a mohawk. So that's usually why I always wear a hat, because I just don't have my hair cut yet that I rock my mohawk. So I usually have like a mohawk going down with like this evil mask, like kind of like my shirt's kind of based off like the Terminator. I don't know if you can see it here. Actually, let me turn my camera down a little bit. But see like the mask on there? That's actually the mask I wear when I come down to the ring. And then so that's why I was like, and then I was like, you know what? If they don't remember my name, every single kid is going to remember that scary looking guy walking to the ring. So I wanted to stand out. That was my biggest thing. You might not remember my name, but you're going to remember the guy with the mask with the spikes. And that's the same thing was for me as a Legion of Doom as a kid. So
that's awesome. No, I love it. So talk a little bit, and we'll make this question 9, but I want you to talk a little bit about the grind of, you know, because so, you know, you mentioned you're traveling from show to show, you're picking on the way. How often do you have to travel for your shows?
So it just depends, man. So I would say in the peak, when I was in wrestling, you get something like momentum. When your momentum starts going and you start getting, you know, notice, or you need to jump and take those opportunities. So I would say right before pandemic, I was really starting to get some traction. And like my normal, so I worked a 9-to-5 job. So I would work a 9-to-5 job. And then, so I'll backtrack a little bit. Before, when I was training, I worked 9 to 5, leave work with my bag. I would eat in my car on the way there. And I would train from like 6 to 9 at night, like 2-3 times a week. And then I would do that for a couple months. And then I would have to, in wrestling, you pay your dues. So you go to these shows and you're literally getting there at 3-4 hours before the show starts. You're unloading the ring. You're setting up the ring. You're like a ring crew. You're tearing everything down, working security. You're paying your dues just like everyone before you start, you know, doing the shows. Once you start doing the shows, then, you know, it's a lot, man. People don't understand, like, the amount of money you make is not worth it, you know, for the wrestling and doing all these shows, but you love it. That's why you do it. You know, same thing like YouTube. Like a lot of people do YouTube. Like you don't make any money for you doing YouTube, but you love what you do, so you just do it. So my peak, I would say, is I would work 9 to 5 during the week on either I would wrestle maybe somewhere locally, like on a Wednesday night, or maybe do a show on a Friday so I can work and do a show. And then Saturday, I would, you know, driving from Tampa to like Valdosta, Georgia up there, wrestle up there, and literally wrestle my show, be up there for a couple hours, and literally get in the car and drive straight back the same night. So like I'm leaving at 10 o'clock in the morning and I'm getting home at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. And then I may have a show Sunday someplace in like 45 minutes away. So I'm literally waking up in the morning, quick and washing my gear and then going to another show. And then, the following week I would be in Alabama. So I would literally, 6 hours Alabama, drive back, do that. Then, 1 week we were in New Orleans, right outside New Orleans, I wrestled. So literally took the girl, we left on a Thursday night and we made a like mini vacation out of it. We drove straight 12 hours to, we spent the night in New Orleans and then the show was 2 hours away, did that show and drove straight back to Florida. So, I mean, it's a grind, Now, not everyone's going to be traveling out of state. A lot of people can wrestle locally and stuff like that, but to help build your brand and to get noticed, you need to travel. You need to be working quality shows. And sometimes those quality shows are other places that you need to go. So
do you have like an ultimate goal for the wrestling? I mean, or just kind of is what it is. It's fun. I love doing it. So it doesn't matter. But I mean, do you have like a dream of someday, maybe being in AEW or, something like that?
So any wrestler that tells you different is lying. I mean, you don't get in there not dreaming of being in WWE or AEW, one of those promotions. So, as I get older, though, I know every day that passes, that's my window is just dwindling now. So now I just look to have fun with it. Before the pandemic, though, I was literally trying. I was getting called to NXT, which is the WWE brand. I was do some extra work in Orlando for them for their TV taping, so they'd bring me in. And which is cool. You're backstage with you see Triple H and Shawn Michaels, the people that I grew up watching, and and I'm just being an extra in the segment on TV where Triple H is directing it, and you're saying they're breaking up fights or something like that. So it was cool. It was a really cool experience. And then I did a tryout with New Japan Pro Wrestling. I did their camp out in LA. I did that for I was out there for a week, and I got to train with some of the top stars from New Japan Pro Wrestling, which is the WWE of Japan. And then I did some extra work for Ring of Honor at the time, which now AEW bought Ring of Honor. And, so I did some extra work for those guys, and it was just cool. It's just a cool experience. I thought if I could step in the ring and wrestle at a flea market in front of 20 people, that would fill my dream. You know what I mean? But then as it started progressing, I was like, oh, wait a minute, this is something I'm good at. And I am an average wrestler at best, I would say. I don't do flips. I'm not doing all the crazy stuff like that, but I can work a crowd really, really well. And I'm good on the microphone. And I know how to touch people's souls. I like to say, you know how to get the reaction from the crowd, because in wrestling, if you're getting booed, if you're getting cheered, that's great. You get no reaction, that's bad. So.
Right. Yeah. No, right. Yeah. Dale Earnhardt used to say it all the time. As long as they're making noise, that's all that matters.
That's right.
No, that's cool, man. That's awesome. I think that's really cool. All right, so last question, kind of a softball, kind of a fun question. I'm a wrestling fan. You're a wrestling fan. The most epic match in your mind, and I have two, okay? And they involved the same wrestler, so I think that goes to how good this guy must have really been. And the first one was Clash of the Champions 6. I think it was in 1989. Ric Flair versus Ricky the Dragon Steamboat. And it was a three fall match, basically, I guess best 2 out of 3.
Yep. And
that was so epic. That's one of the best matches. I think pro wrestling was really built off of that, down the road. The other one for me was at WrestleMania. I think it was WrestleMania 3. I think it was when Hulk and Andre wrestled, when Hulk slammed Andre. Yep. And it was Randy Savage, Macho Man, against Ricky the Dragon Steamboat.
Yep.
And it was an epic match. And so I believe Ricky the Dragon Steamboat was just that good of a wrestler. He was just choreography-wise, he was just that good to work with. So do you have – I was interested to ask you this because I think I'm a little bit older than you. So I was interested, for you, what's the most epic match ever?
So for me, it's a little different, than a lot of people, because – for me, I love the storyline. So it may not be a 5-star match, but it was the impact it had on me as a kid or stuff like that. So there's a couple things. Well, one is I like The Rock versus Hogan. That was just, in Toronto, was at WrestleMania. Just the atmosphere and how hot that crowd was, the anticipation. When they stay in the ring and The Rock looks to his left and Hogan looks to his right, and everyone's standing on their feet, losing their mind, and all they did was just look to the crowd. that shows you how much people are invested in it. Okay. So that was, that always has a special place in my heart, just because it just gives me those feelings inside. But as a kid, I'm really big in wrestling on psychology, because everything has to make sense. So if you go in the ring and you're just doing all kind of crazy flips, it looks cool, but that it doesn't make sense in the match. So it's sometimes some of the best matches, like you watch Ricky Dragon Steamboat and Macho Man, they told a story, they build up to a point in that match. They're not doing anything crazy, which you're going to be mind blown. You'll be cool for a minute, but then, okay, you're back to the story. So growing up, there was a match between Jake the Snake Roberts and Rick Martel. Okay. And Rick Martel sprayed Jake the Snake Roberts. He used to carry his perfume, he called it. And it's like big, it looked like a giant pesticide container, which is just for show for TV. It was like this big thing, and he would spray it and stuff like that. But he sprayed Jake the Snake Roberts in the eye, and Jake did an angle where he was blind. And I thought one of the coolest matches they ever did, is they did a blindfold match because he was blind. So what they did was each of them had to wear like a burlap sack on top of their heads. And if you watch the match, though, it's how they use the crowd to interact. And I thought it was absolutely genius. So Rick Martel would be walking around blind and the crowd won't react. But then Jake the Snake Roberts would just point his finger at the crowd, and they would start going crazy when it was just pointing the finger there. And then they would just go, just how they interacted with the crowd. I always thought that was like the coolest thing ever, because they got that crowd so invested in the match, where the crowd actually became part of the match by just pointing his finger and going in there now. So that was always a good one for me. I love that one. I mean, it doesn't show up in people's top list, but when I say psychology-wise, I thought it was always a great match psychology-wise.
I love that answer. That's a great answer. And I remember that match. So, yeah, I know the one you're talking about well. So. All right, dude, that's been 10 questions. So I want to ask you to do something. You can say no, but I want to ask you to do something to kind of take us out here. Can you give me 30 to 45 seconds of the Scoundrel? If you're working the crowd, can you give me 30 to 45 seconds of just what you would be, talking trash to the crowd?
Talking trash to the crowd? Oh, man. Put me on the spot here. All right. So usually if I come out, I'm usually talking a lot of trash to the crowd, stuff like that. So I'll grab the mic and let's see. So you're from Kentucky, right?
I am, yeah.
All right, you Kentuckians. I come out to this ring right here. All you fat, out of shape welfare recipients, stand up, show your damn respect to the Scoundrel. All right, and walk around the ring, take out your flip phones. Just let you know, I'm going to make a couple rules. One, I don't accept government cheese. Number two, I don't accept change from your couch. So when you see me at the merchandise stand, don't come up there trying to ask for a handout. Don't ask for anything, all right? Get out your flip phone, take a picture, because this is the best thing that ever walked into your town.
Ladies and gentlemen, that's been 10 questions. I love it. That's awesome. Good job,
Hit the bell, man. Ring that damn bell.